In this video, I'm going to show us some tricks, tips, strategies for how to find images, and I'm only going to look at images in this video, that are licensed under Creative Commons licenses. This is not a video about understanding all of the various licenses or even digging deep into what Creative Commons is and everything they do, but it's easy to just go to their website, which is listed here at the top, and to read a lot more about the organization and also to find out what they do in terms of their licensing. Instead, I'm going to spend time in the video showing you how to locate and how to determine if there's a Creative Commons license on something or a public domain indicator. There's a lot to know about copyright. There's a lot to know about fair use, which is a legal way that some things can be used, but this video is not about those things as well. What I will start with is that many people make an assumption that if they find something on the internet, that it's somehow legally usable, that by nature of being on the internet, they should be able to take it and do whatever they want. They can just grab it, download it, post it on their own website, or maybe modify it and repost it, but that's not true. Plenty of things are allowed to do that, and that's where Creative Commons comes in. That's what we're going to look for, but we should make an assumption that anything we find is copyrighted in a way that prevents us from using it. So we should just assume we can't use it, cannot use it for our purposes until we can prove otherwise. So instead of just going right to Google Images and looking for stuff, I'm going to suggest that you go about doing a search in some slightly different ways. So the first thing is we'll start with, again, looking at Creative Commons. We're going to look for ultimately licenses, and they may be things that look like this. It might say CC, or it might have a CC with a circle around it. But if you go to this page, you can kind of get familiar with what these different symbols and licenses look like, so that as we find our sources, we can kind of connect it back to the idea of what the license is. So to begin, before I even start searching, what I do, and this is true of any time that I have to do something that involves a search, I make sure that I have a good list of keywords and search terms to be able to plug in so that I'm not sort of scrambling or sitting there forever going, I wonder what I'm supposed to be looking for. So this document actually comes from something that I have developed in other ways of looking for words that I'm looking for research. I'm looking for things that I might want to answer to build a project, etc. And in that list of keywords and search terms and important phrases, I've also generated some ideas for if I'm looking for something like images, or I'm looking for photographs, any other kind of visual that's going to help convey the meaning of my text. But I also might want to look for stuff that might be decorative, etc. So I would ask myself questions. Am I looking for photographs, or am I looking for things like illustrations that have labels, etc.? Am I looking for charts, graphs, tables, something else? Do I want an infographic? All of those things are visuals, and it's possible that those are copyrighted depending on where they come from. So I need to think broadly about what visuals mean and what I'm borrowing in terms of work. So as I think about what other words to put on my list of terms, I certainly can think about the literal or exact representation of the theme I'm writing about. So if my project is about building a community garden, then I might want to look for images about gardens, or specifically community gardens, etc. And if I come up with a list of exact things I would want as images or as visuals, then I'll put that on my list. So I want families, maybe I'm looking for dirt with plants in it, seedlings. If I'm looking at a particular region, I might want to look up something like the native plants of that region, or maybe what helps with gardening, like pollinators and such. But it's also possible, or instead, it's possible that my topic is one where I may not be able to find a literal or an exact image. It's also possible that I'm working on a project where I would not want to find a literal or an exact image. And what I mean by that is if I were doing research and I was building a project around, let's say, child abuse, I would hope not to be able to find exact images of child abuse, certainly not on the internet, not anywhere else. I would not want to actually find those and put those into a project. Instead, I need to think then in a more abstract or conceptual way. How would I visually represent what I'm writing about? So here's where, again, maybe charts, graphs, infographics, those kinds of things can come into play. But I also might look for visuals that help sort of think about or help my audience conceptualize or visualize, understand what's going on without literally showing an image of it. I also would want to think about any kind of visuals that would help convey a mood or a tone if I want my audience to feel a particular way. So again, there's the exact image. I would want pictures of gardens if I'm doing a project on community gardens, but I also want to convey the energy of what it is like and what people feel like when they do gardening. So even though we know full well that it's going to rain sometimes, or that there's going to be snow occasionally, depending on where we live, I would want to convey ideas related to what sunshine makes a lot of people feel like, or what bright colors make people feel like, particularly summer and spring. So I might look for visuals that help me convey those things in addition to maybe sort of the abstract concepts of my project and then the literal things of my project. So for my demonstration, I'm not going to look for all of these particular things. I'm only going to focus on one. But as you do your own searches, think about looking for literal or exact, again, depending on your topic. And then, come up with this list before you start to search of how would you conceptually represent your topic, or how would you help set a mood, etc. Move past the idea that everything has to be photographs and instead think about other ways to represent visual things, or to represent content in a visual way, or thinking about how visuals can help your audience understand what's in the text that you've written about. So for this demonstration, I'm actually going to take a look at, we're going to look for butterflies. They're pretty to look at, they're pretty harmless, and I'm not likely to find something that I'd rather not look at on the internet. So again, we're looking for things that are licensed under Creative Commons or that we might find in the public domain. Public domain essentially means that the public has control over it, or the public is allowed to use it in a particular way. Creative Commons means that the creator has put a license on it that says this is what you can do with that work. So we're going to look for things that fit under both of those. I'm going to show us in particular a few websites where we can start to look for things that are already licensed under Creative Commons. The first page is Creative Commons Search, or CC Search. So if you hit the web address is here on the screen, but you can also do a quick search for Creative Commons Search or CC Search. There's a search bar here that we can type in our keyword, key phrase, or search term and start to do a search. If we look below, we see there's some other things that we can check off to help filter. Do I want to use this commercially? Meaning, am I going to make money from it? Is it something that I know I want to modify or adapt? Now, this can mean a couple of different things, but if you think you're going to crop out one piece of it, or you're going to change the color on it, then those are modifications and adaptations. So make sure that you're checking this off if you think you might want to change it in some particular way. So we have CC Search. I'm also going to have us look at Flickr to looking for how to search within Flickr for things that are listed as Creative Commons. Not everything there is. And looking at Wikimedia Commons, because most things that are posted here, or I should say everything that's posted here, should be released under some kind of Creative Commons license or public domain. We also can take a look at Google, but for the most part, we're going to look at CC Search, Flickr, and Wikimedia Commons. Here's where I will interject that as I do the search, what you might consider doing is putting the video on pause and trying a search on your own as I look on these various pages. It's up to you how you want to do that, but it makes a lot of sense to, follow along, press pause, try it out yourself, and then come back to the video. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm here on CC Search, and I'm going to type in, I'm just going to type in butterfly. I'm going to try to keep this really simple. Your phrases might be a little different. I'm going to suggest that you start with the sort of the broad idea first and then add things if you're not finding what you need. So in this case, I'll search for butterfly, and I'm going to leave those other two things unchecked for now. So we can see on the side here, there are things for filters that we can add to it. These were the ones that were on that front page. I don't plan to make any money from it. I'm not sure if I don't think I'm going to adapt or modify it all. I really just want an illustrated image to put into my work. If I look down here, I also see here's a list of all of these licenses. And again, if you go back to the Creative Commons list of licenses, you can get a further explanation of what those things mean and what you're able to do with it. But again, briefly, I'll kind of show you what I usually check off. So the sort of the most open ones, or the ones that allow you to do the most, have fewer things after them. So CC meaning Creative Commons, and then we have this other series of letters. The more, or the further up we go on this list, often it means that there are more restrictions on what you're allowed to do with it or not allowed to do with it. But something like a CC0, that means it's public domain. It's wide open. You can kind of do whatever you want. If I come back up here to the top of the list where it says CC BY, this is pretty much that you can, it says right here, you can distribute it, you can remix, which means you can add it into something or whatever. You can adapt it, you can do all sorts of stuff with it, but you have to give credit. In other words, you're giving attribution to the creator. So this is a pretty wide open license. The reason I say that is in terms of filters, since I'm not really sure maybe if I'm allowed to use it or what I'm allowed to use it for or what I'm going to do, I usually will select these first few. So public domain or CC BY. And that way I'm pretty sure as long as I'm giving it attribution, I'm okay to use it. So if I'm still not completely clear what these other licenses might mean, then I'll probably do a search where I limit it to these really wide open licenses. And what you should have noticed is that as I checked them off, and I'm going to go the opposite direction here, as I check them off, the images that show up on this page change. Because what's happening is that the site is now filtering which images have this license connected to it. So if I come over to the image, I can see here's the image itself. There's a lot of other information that's here. Text I can copy. There's related images. But over here, I will see here's the license information. So this is connected to this particular Creative Commons license. And it says that I have to give credit to the creator. In other words, give attribution to the person who created it. And again, this video is not long enough for me to put all of that stuff in here to talk about who's the creator and all that kind of stuff. You're going to have to do some of your own digging around like you would for any source that you borrow. Who's the author? What's the title? Where did you find it? But know that in this case, if I use this image, I have to credit the person who created it. So that's CC search. Flickr is a little bit different. And again, I'm going to put in my search term. Oops, if I can type. In this case, butterfly. And I just started in the homepage of Flickr. You could actually start with Flickr Explore. There's other ways to get in. But once I get into this page and I typed in butterfly, let me show you a quick example. If I click on one image there and I take a look around, here's the image, here's the author, the title of it, some other information. If I go over here to the right, here's where we see licensing information. In this case, this is a copyrighted image, all rights reserved. What that means is Aurelia owns control over this, that she does not want us users to take it and use it in any particular way unless we get her permission, probably pay her for it, etc. So what we should be doing is, instead of just grabbing whatever we find, is when we go into Flickr, we put in our key terms, then we go over here to the left where it says any license, and we're going to click on that, and we're going to come down to all Creative Commons or one of these other ones. There are a lot of different ones that we can choose from. Here's where I will interject that anything that comes from a US government site is considered public domain. In other words, taxpayers are paying for it, so we're allowed to use it. You should give credit to it. You have to give attribution. So if you use a picture from NASA of the Earth, that's free for you to use, but you make sure that you credit it, that it goes to NASA. So that's something else to look at. But in this case, I'm going to look at all Creative Commons licenses. So I'm looking for Butterfly. I've chosen from my drop-down menu all Creative Commons licenses, and then I'll come here to one of the images that I might want to use. And so I'm going to click on this one. And here we have, again, the author, or really the creator, and this creator has decided to release his work under public domain. So by law, I would not have to give credit to this person when I use the work, but I say that it is ethical to do it anyway. So even though it says public domain and I'm allowed to take it and I can modify it, I can post it someplace else and I don't have to give credit, I still think because this person is the creator, that the person should get credit for it. But just understand that by law, you're not required to give credit or attribution to public domain. So let me go back to this main page here, pick another one. Let's say this one. Here we have an example, again, on the right-hand side within Flickr, of some rights reserved. The symbols are here for the Creative Commons licensing. Again, you can always go back to Creative Commons to try to figure those things out. But if you're in Flickr, and you click on this link here, some rights reserved, this takes us to the Creative Commons license itself, where we can read about it and understand what we're allowed to do with it and what we're not allowed to do with it.